CBRN overview. When we look at CBRN and we think about CBRN, everybody always drops their minds to times of conflict and war. And we think about bombs being dropped and gases being released. This isn't necessarily the truth. We see chemical warfare agents used in the public domain, and we've seen that quite a lot over the last couple of years. But we've also got industrial chemicals which are classed as a CBRN event. So the learning outcomes for this lesson is discuss the characteristics of a CBRN environment. I'm going to show you a video clip. This video clip is from Zambia in February of this year. In February of this year, they had lots of civil unrest. This was due to two tribes who didn't like each other. These two tribes lived in the copper belt of Zambia. One of the tribes developed a chemical weapon. They then placed that on the door handles of the opposing tribe and also turned it into a gas and put it through the keyholes of the houses. This resulted in 56 fatalities and over 150 severely injured. Alongside that actual attack, there were also some secondary effects, and we'll talk about those secondary effects after the video.
Let's turn to Zambia now in just a moment when we get our map up. It's all about mobs that police say are seeking revenge for a series of chemical attacks that have killed at least 50 people. The lynchings are the latest gruesome turn in an extraordinary story that has been playing out in the country over the past few months. Since there's been a string of reports that emerged of people being targeted by assailants who sprayed them with an unknown chemical that then left them unconscious. I know it's a complicated story, but people are angry. There have been riots, and the story is actually front page news in the country at the moment. Let's take a look here. This is the Times of Zambia. It says rioters have been denied bail after allegedly damaging public property. Others are trying to calm things down. Zambia's founding president, that is Kenneth Kaunda, he has said that the chemical attacks, they must be stopped, and mob attacks on suspected members of the public must stop. He went on to say as well that these attacks are alien to Zambia. They disturb the efforts we have made towards a stable society.
So from that video, you'll see that the chemical agent used caused fatalities and injuries. However, the secondary effect was that of public understanding. People didn't understand what was happening. So this quickly spilled over into the capital city. There was mass riots, and people who believed they knew who the perpetrators were dragging people into the street and hanging them from trees. This is all about understanding and keeping your population informed of what's happening. So what is a CBRN event? Well, it's a release or dispersal of hazardous CBRN agents in quantities and circumstances that put individuals or groups of people at risk. So effectively, it's the release of some sort of chemical or biological into the normal environment that can either affect whole populations, groups of people, or can be targeted against one individual. This is what we've seen with the Novichok attacks. They can be intentional or unintentional releases. And an intentional release is accidental. It's not supposed to happen. This could be from natural disasters that damage industrial plants, military or storage facilities. It could be an industrial accident involving fire or explosion at a chemical plant or storage facility. This is where they use lots of chemicals in normal everyday manufacturing. If there's an accident, the tanks could become punctured, there could be fires, which then spread these chemicals either as gases or liquids. There could be an accident at a nuclear power plant. Throughout the whole history of the use of nuclear power, there has only ever been two large-scale accidents. That's of Chernobyl and Fukushima. So although the risk is there, it doesn't happen very often. There could also be a leak at a biological containment facility. These are places that hold biological pathogens to help fight disease, so developing immunisations and vaccinations. The most likely event is an accident during transport. If we look to the image on the right-hand side, you will see that it's a chemical tanker that's been involved in a road traffic accident. Once that happened, the tanker became punctured and it leaked out a chemical liquid. Subsequently, the vehicle caught fire. That heated that liquid up and turned it into a gas that then quickly spread around the surrounding environment. It could be a conflict where a CBRN agent has been released due to collateral damage. So during war, things get targeted. Once that target is then subjected to some form of bombardment, if there's any industrial facilities around it, they could accidentally be damaged. It could be a remnant of war. So it could be something from a conflict that's happened many, many years ago. It's been left, somebody finds it, accidentally plays with it, tampers with it, kicks it, that could release that CBRN agent. Or biological pandemics. Due to the way we move around the globe and the rise in populations, that means that pandemics spread now very quickly, and we're seeing that now. An intentional release, however, is slightly different. This is a use of these CBRN agents in armed conflicts or other situations of violence, such as terrorism. Its intention is to cause injury and death and generate fear. Alongside the effects from the CBRN agents that might be used, during warfare, many of these are added to artillery shells and bombs. So you also have an explosive hazard. So you may have CBRN patients and also patients that have traumatic injuries consistent with explosions, and a mixture of both. There could be contamination over widespread areas or confined spaces. So if I was to release a liquid chemical in a city block, that contamination is going to get on all the buildings, all the vehicles, and all the people. So that'll very quickly spread. And because it sticks to things, it makes them long-term hazards. Whereas if I release a small gas within an office, that will only affect the people in that office and that office space. It won't go anywhere else. So how do I know, or what are the indications that it could happen? Like all terrorism, we think about suspicious munitions, devices, or packages. These are things that may be placed in open view. It's not necessarily going to be a military device. It could be hidden inside a suitcase. We could see patterns of illness inconsistent with natural disease to your environment and climate. So within the UAE, if I started to see patients with Ebola, that would be very unusual, and I would look upon that as some form of CBRN incident. You might see an abrupt spike in the rate of death or illness amongst humans and animals. This is how we recognise those pandemics and those diseases that spread. It might be unusual liquids, sprays, or vapours. If I was to see a truck driving down the road, spraying out lots of unknown liquid onto roads and pathways, I'd find that highly unusual. Low-lying clouds or fogs that are unrelated to your climate's weather system. When we talk about low-lying clouds and fogs, these are things that sit around knee to ankle high. And if they are a CBRN agent, they'll normally be coloured. So something like a bright green or a yellow. You may see people dressed unusually or wearing protective masks. When we talk about unusual dress, this is people wearing lots of heavy set clothing during a summer period. It doesn't fit the norm. And when we talk about masks, it's not the surgical type masks that we're seeing people wear now. It's the type of mask you see behind me. They're specifically designed to protect against CBRN agents. Because of the way these agents work, they do have the potential to cause adverse health. Many of them are biological pathogens, which can pass on disease. And chemicals and radiation can cause severe injury. They create hazardous environments. If we look to the Chernobyl incident, when the reactor melted down, this then spread radioactive contamination, making areas surrounding that reactor uninhabitable and unusable for several hundred years. You may see immediate or delayed symptoms. In the event of a chemical, I would expect to see immediate, very quick symptoms because of the way it works on the body. With a biological or a radiological device, I would expect to see delayed symptoms, sometimes anything from hours to months. They have the potential to cause mass casualties and significant loss of life. Many of them are designed to do this. They're very difficult to recognise or detect. If we don't have the correct detection equipment, we're not going to pick them up. If we're not using our healthcare facilities to notice signs and symptoms around different parts of our population, we might miss them. And some of the agents don't have any colours or smells, which make it even harder. This can cause uncertainties about their release. We may not know it's happened, or we can't detect it. And without those detectors, we won't know the exposure level, and we may not know who's been exposed. This can lead to a lack of public understanding, because if we don't inform people, they will make their own minds up and they'll start to panic, and you can get that civil unrest. If we don't inform them correctly, they might not follow our guidance, things like the 2-metre rule and the